Joel Siosson on the Fisch Bowl. Welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
Yes, I hope I don't drown. You know, life saving, right?
Right, right. Well, let's hope the temperature's just right, just in case.
Right.
Awesome, awesome. First, I just have to say that I'm like a huge, huge fan of your work.
Oh,
I grew up watching all the stuff that you produced, wrote, and directed. I actually went to school for screenwriting at Point Park University here in Pittsburgh, and my whole like style of what I like to write and stuff. I have a lot of inspirations, and a lot of the stuff that you've worked on has been a huge, huge like impact and inspiration for a lot of the stuff that I'm currently trying to write and get into production and stuff.
I'm really glad you said that, Sam, because I've done a few films over the years, but the thing that I'm most proud of is those people who, from whatever association or contact or involvement in productions or on the periphery, that actually used whatever they could gather from whatever I was doing and we were doing to actually forward their careers. And some of them are like just doing incredible stuff that dwarfs my work, and that's in a way even cooler because you feel like you're a part of building something more permanent than just a movie that comes and goes. Careers are everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was reading, I'm not going to quote you correctly on this, but you said something about how it's like you want to make movies that aren't necessarily going to be instant classics, but they'll hold their place in time for, like, I guess the genre of like the type of film that they are.
Yeah,
And I think I got close to what you said.
yeah, it's a more elegant way of phrasing what I had probably said, which is the kinds of movies in general, and many of the ones I've made, in the genre field in particular, you do your best work and they can be really entertaining, but it's like being a journalist for a national newspaper. You write something, they read it the next morning, and then that's it. 10 years from now, you're not going to be looking back, unless you're an archivist, on what the New York Times wrote about an incident that happened in 2021.
Right, right.
And so you're always marching onward.
Yeah, absolutely, and that stuck with me because my biggest heroes of like the horror icons of the 70s, 80s, and 90s are the people who did like the B grade stuff. That
Mm.
is really like a lot of it was like looked down upon back then, and to me those are the movies that kind of hold up today, where in a lot of ways the current mainstream horror genre is it's coming back in a big way, but we're also kind of lacking a lot of originality because everything is they're trying to like reboot every horror
Yeah.
franchise that was from the 80s,
Everybody's, yeah, absolutely.
and
They're just, go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say, personally, I think there's so many people with ideas like myself that those were great when they had their run, but, major studios like I love Blumhouse. I think
Yeah, right.
Blumhouse is really like dominating the horror genre
Yeah.
right now. But I would prefer if they'd stop doing more Halloween movies and start greenlighting stuff that people want to see. That's like original stuff that can clearly be inspired by all that stuff from the 80s, because pretty much like I'm in my early 30s. Pretty much everyone that is getting into screenwriting and producing and coming up in Hollywood now is all in their like either late 20s or 30s, 40s esque, and they all grew up with the 80s stuff. But there's plenty of people that have original ideas for a new slasher franchise, or a new vampire franchise, or some monster thing, and
Mm.
instead of like just repeating the same stuff because they feel that, I guess, it's safe and, they can, cash money on it. I think, and a lot of other people would like to see new stuff come out.
You're absolutely right, and it's the saddest part of the game, not just in the genre world, but in films in general, is this whole I want something absolutely unique and never before seen and different, and something people are going to talk about that changes the game and all this stuff. And what's this like? How do I know it's going to make money? And you're going, what it's like is nothing. That's why I'm giving it to make into a movie, and it's a shame. I think as long as films are being dominated by profit, you're going to have that to confront. It's different in one sense, which I kind of wish I had this in one way and one way not back when I got started, which is the ubiquity of the equipment that you need to make a movie now. You can make one on your iPhone, and that's a game changer for people who believe in the strength of an idea, because if you can just make a 20-minute, what do we call a sizzler reel, a film scene or two, or a compression of the movie that you ultimately want to make, and you can showcase that difference, that idea, that creativity, it may not necessarily be what winds up on screen making money, but it will get you in the door to pitch your film to people who can make it happen. So you have that ability to make an idea real that in a way I couldn't have done back in my beginning without spending an incredible amount of money. And so I say to everybody, look at film now as what typewriters did for novelists back in the 19th century. It just opened up a world that now all you have to buy is a typewriter. Now the ideas are king, not your uncle's money, not the studio exec who you're related to or extorting or whatever it is. It's all about your ideas.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. A lot of doors have opened for filmmakers, and like YouTube has and social media has allowed a lot of different people to never before do something can now have an outlet to advertise themselves, promote themselves, make something of themselves. And it's really like a cool age that we're living in, despite, the bad, chaos stuff that's going on.
Yeah. Well, it's you even say the word chaos and I start coughing with fake COVID, but the difficult thing that you're facing as a younger filmmaker, and I am too, as a guy who's still trying to scratch out a few more films before I hang up my spurs, is the fact that, when I started around 1985, I remember an article in the New York Times that said they counted 50 independent feature films made in 1985. And that number is now over 20,000. And so, on the one hand, everybody's got more access, and on the other hand, everybody's got more access. And so you're up against that. But then there are, as you say, like YouTube and God knows how many other outlets for expression along with the mainstream ones. So everybody's got their challenges going forward.
Absolutely. I definitely wanted to talk about some of your work and kind of hear some insights if possible.
Sure.
The first question that I wanted to ask you is, what got you interested in film?
I was looking to follow in my father's footsteps as a fine artist and commercial artist. And I went to art school and went along that trajectory and then kind of drifted into animation, thinking that's sort of cool, art at 24 frames a second, until I got into this Disney internship program where I realized I was going to have to be the guy hunched over a light table, scratching out all those pictures, and then that's just too draining for me. That's sweatshop work, and you click a button on a film camera, and lo and behold, all those images come roaring through without you lifting a finger. And so I ended up just looking at film as motion art, and always wanted to be a cinematographer as a result. And sort of as luck and the currents of career would take you, I just went in another direction, several different directions.
Very cool. You were starting to talk about some of your work in the 80s, and one of the films that I wanted to ask you about was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of those disposable napkins that actually stuck around for a while.
Yeah, how did that project come about? And
that was a case where, the idea, like I was mentioning earlier, is king. It was truly a unique story. And I had a development guy named Mike Petzel at the time who brought it to me and said, like, this is just such an awesome story. And it was of its time, and kind of that's why I thought it wouldn't linger, because it was so much a cultural moment. But I think people are sort of digging it in a sort of a whole new way now. But it was, this wonderful celebration of stupidity. And at the time I was the age of the people in the story primarily, and getting the humor, getting the genial countercultural, humor of it. And the people that I worked for at the time were all executives my age, that I am now. And, I remember the first time we screened the film, there wasn't a single laugh, not a smile, not anything. I mean, they really did not get it at all. And only because a company came along and bought it for a fire sale like nothing. They took it and they tested it in front of a real audience, which, the original film company had no intention of even bothering to do. And it tested through the roof. It was just one of those just lightning in a bottle moment. And it's so, I'm sure you notice it in your own experiences of working on films and seeing other people's films, is that how you feel about a movie is completely influenced by whoever you're sitting next to. And when I was sitting next to a bunch of dour old executives just restlessly groaning in their seats, I hated it. I hated the film. And then when I saw it with people enjoying it, I was elated. I knew right then that we had something that was kind of magical. And so, there's that whole aspect of the business of you really never know. It's all how the mood of the moment affects you and affects everybody else.
Absolutely, absolutely. Totally agree with that. I kind of have to say that in relation to that, my first actual memory is being in a movie theater at age 3, watching Back to the Future Part 3 with my parents. And my dad took it as a mission, as a stay-at-home dad, to introduce me to movies as an educational process. And I kind of always tell this story whenever I can. My first R-rated movie was Total Recall at age 5. And whenever you see a movie like Total Recall at that young of an age, one, I've become obsessed with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and equally pretty much Sylvester Stallone and like the whole Expendables team. But like a movie like that visual with the colors and Mars and the violence and everything, it just kind of like opened the door to me that I said I need to see like more. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. And my dad, would sit me in front of the TV and show me stuff. And I developed a huge passion for horror, and especially the B-grade stuff. B-grade horror, B-grade movies, sci-fi in general is like my number one favorite genre style movies, whether it's sci-fi, horror, or comedy. There's something about the B-grade versus like, the mainstream blockbuster stuff that, while, a lot of that's good, I'm not dissing it. There's something about the B grade that it takes it like a little less seriously, but can take it like just as seriously at the same time. And it also like allows you, the writer and the filmmakers, to get away with a little more slack, on the story that they're trying to tell, because usually it's a little more outrageous than something, that would be on the mainstream. And I think that's why, a lot of your work, I'm a huge, huge fan of. Like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was great. I love the newest one also, but I kind of have to say that Bogus Journey is still my number one favorite, and I think it still has the best soundtrack.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. It is, you're actually right. That is the one, I think, attraction of B movies. I mean, they're an opportunity to try different things that you'd never get away with on bigger films. So there's an element of creativity that sort of surpasses in many respects the studio films, often but not always, of course. And a lot of great filmmakers, De Palma, Scorsese, goes on and on, started in like the the confined quarters of places like Corman and AIP and all these sort of hash houses, grind houses, whatever you want to call them. One of the biggest fans of grindhouse movies is, of course, Tarantino, who even made a film called that, or worked on one. I don't know if that was all his work. I can't remember now. But you mentioned Total Recall. I just had a little bit of a smile at that because I actually was the first guy approached to produce it. But it was a totally different movie back then. It was to be directed by Bruce Beresford, who is like this art house director who had been done Tender Mercies and Trip to Bountiful. And he was like all about, heartland dramas. And here he's doing this outrageous sci-fi movie. And the guy who's going to star in it was Mark Harmon, who back at the time was kind of a hunky guy that was on the rise, but totally different animal. I remember reading the script going like, this is really cool, but it ends so weird. I mean, like they build a Sphinx on Mars and I go, what is that all about? And then Beresford goes, I don't know either, but it was just like, thought it'd be cool to see a Sphinx on Mars. And I remember thinking like, okay, so that's what the geniuses think and do when they're making a movie. They just go, well, I don't know what it means, but it'll be cool. Let's do it. And I sort of took that with me, that sometimes that's all a movie needs. Stop trying to justify everything. The Japanese certainly don't. They just make the coolest horror movies by not explaining a damn thing.
Right. Absolutely. On the subject of B-grade movies, and I think it's a perfect segue, one of the greatest horror franchises that you worked on was the Prophecy movies.
I'm glad you point that out because it's probably, if you were to ask me up front what franchise I'm the most proud of, it would be that one. And specifically for all the reasons you talked about, your love of B-grade and horror movies as you describe them, is and your lament about not seeing anything original. That was original. I mean, that was a movie that was unlike any other so-called horror thriller that was out there at the time or before it. It was, for those who don't know, it was a retelling of the fall of Satan through the writings of John Milton, Paradise Lost. How the angel Gabriel, played by Christopher Walken, sees human beings increasingly as a threat to his preferential treatment by God. And once he fears that humans may be more loved than the angels by God, he rebels, and now he's out to not only eliminate humanity, but create a second hell. And then you have to sort of rope in Lucifer, played wonderfully by Viggo Mortensen, to try to prevent this from happening, only because Lucifer doesn't want to see another hell that he has to compete with. So you have these really strange bedfellows, like some Le Carre, espionage Cold War thriller, and all these angels are purely drawn from the Old Testament, where they're brutal mothers. They just slash and kill and rip hearts out and eat them, and they're just bad. It was just a whole nother take on our nation's theological underpinning, and obviously offensive to some, although it really doesn't touch upon the blasphemies of is God good or not. Of course he is. He's the light. And evil is evil, and it's however it presents itself. So it was so complex, so layered, that it just allowed us to have so many different spins on it and justify, which we don't always get to do, the making of more sequels that can sort of expound on that and develop the idea over, the course of geography and time.
That's awesome. Totally agree. That was one of the things that I loved about the franchise. I've seen all of them multiple times. The first one is still probably, I think, my favorite, but seeing the progression of the story and fleshed out through like 5 sequels was really interesting. And there's certain like horror franchises that are dear to me, and I'll watch them right to it's just pure trash. And I watched the Leprechaun movies to when he went to the hood and then he went back to the hood, which I always kind of argue, because how could he go back to the hood because he lived at the end of the hood, but
yeah, I'm not going to try to justify that one for you.
Right. But the Prophecy movies, just the concept, I mean, it's like they made that really not so good kind of remake of the Prophecy with Paul Bettany a couple years ago.
Yeah,
It was called
I know what you're talking about.
Legion. That's what it was
Right.
called. And when I watched it, I'm like, I can't even like sit through this because this is like clearly just ripping off the Prophecy movie. And as much as I love Paul Bettany like kicking ass, I'm like that movie is it was so unoriginal. Like a lot of the stuff that was coming out at the time that was just pure like rip-offs and rehashes of like classic movies that, and some of them like weren't even that old, and like they're already like, recycling the ideas like not in a good way.
Well, that's really what kind of, I want to say, soured me on the horror, action genre. But I took a little break from it. I'm actually doing another one now that's an original. I'm kind of fond of. I wrote and I'm producing here in Oklahoma right now. But I had to take a little time out, and the COVID shutdown came at a sort of an opportune time because it really allowed me to sort of reevaluate how I wanted to keep going as a filmmaker, because you're absolutely right. I mean, we have this tendency over and over again to just be rehashing and retreading and remaking, the same movie. And I just didn't want to keep grinding out wax fruit versions of my original films and other people's as well. And so I actually wanted to try taking what I'd learned in the genre and adapting it to a different context of story. And my favorite thing that I've actually done in the last 15, 20 years is not even a genre film at all. It's a movie that's actually just coming out this month called My Best Worst Adventure. And it has, on its surface, a story just about a kid from LA who acts out and gets sent to the hinterlands of northern Thailand to live with her crazy grandmother and has to sort of survive both emotionally and physically in this really crazy mixed up environment. But for me, it was my ability to tell a story about a person landing on an alien planet and how they struggle to survive in a totally different context than all the ones that we've been shoveled at over the years in multitudes. And it was really gratifying because we did a festival run that was an awesome thing to watch, how people just stood up and cheered and cried and laughed and all that stuff that you really want to have that communal experience in a movie theater that's so rare now. And the reviews have been awesome as well. I mean, we're still at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm just fiercely proud of that thing. And it's just inspired me to kind of go, you know what? Horror movies come in all types of baskets, even ones that masquerade as coming-of-age stories. That sort of opened up doors for me that I'm going to keep running through.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I kind of feel like I have to share this with you, like, on the topic of like the prophecy and everything. I have the first draft done, and it probably still needs like one or two more rewrites or edits with it. But the prophecy movies, again, were just such like a huge, influence on me. And so were, like a lot of other movies. I've basically been writing, it's like a haunted highway script, but it deals very much with like heaven and hell, angels and demons and the devil and everything. The script that I wrote probably needs like one or two, maybe three more rewrites or edits, but it's basically like a haunted highway. It's definitely B grade, like haunted highway horror action thriller script, and it deals with like heaven and hell, and it's based on a little bit on the Faust legends, and also ironically the legend of Robert Johnson, like a haunted highway like action horror thriller script. And I kind of have like a whole like a trilogy with like maybe more sequels planned for it. But I just wanted to share that with you because
Well, that sounds like something that would attach from my little crucible there, and I really wish you luck with it. I think there's still, to this day, there's still a place for a cool new idea out there in the marketplace. And my advice to people always when they're talking to me about a script is, and it's advice I give myself as well, give it to somebody you don't know who has no investment in saying it's good or bad, and ask them to read it. And if they say, just blows me away, you're on the right track. But if they're not blown away, then you got to go back to the drawing board, because that's who you're up against, are the people that do blow you away. And the problem is your mom and your best friend and all these people are, they're going to encourage you when you really least need the encouragement.
Right.
I do have to run because I'm being called back to the set, but you have the passion. I can hear it in your voice. You have the ideas. Just keep at it, man. And anybody out there who's also entertaining the notion, just get it written, get it good, get it read. And the more people that read it, the more people that are going to pass it around. And that's how we got Bill and Ted made. It was just a script that got passed around for 10 years. But finally, enough people said, this is awesome, that it got made. And I still have faith in that mechanism.
Awesome. Well, Joel, thank you so much for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me. I have a long list of stuff to ask you, so I'd love to have you on the show again anytime.
Well, as soon as I finish this one, I'm going to want to promote the hell out of it, so we'll talk again.
Awesome. Sounds great.
All right, Sam. Great talking to you.
You too. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.